Weaning fledglings is a very important process in bird keeping, but it can go wrong and fledglings will be lost if done incorrectly. So today I'm going to be weaning some of the young birds from our native birds and our canaries, and I'll show you how I do it. Prior to actually weaning the young birds away from their parents, we need to prepare where they're going to live. This is crucial for the development of these birds because we have to get this right so that they can actually develop successfully into adult birds. Now I have them in a small bird room. It's a bird room that is separate from my main bird room and my breeding aviaries, and the reason for this is it allows me to first off maintain a high quality of air inside those bird rooms where there isn't going to be young birds molting and increasing the dust levels, but additionally it allows me to keep the disturbances to a minimum in the main bird room where the native birds are breeding. And of course, if you know native birds, they are quite prone to disturbances, so you have to get this spot on. So inside the young bird room we have UPVC cages, and we additionally have some plastic coated cages. So the idea of this is it allows them to be kept clean for longer, and remember, young birds are susceptible to diseases that perhaps adult birds wouldn't be. They're still young, they're still in their developmental stages, their immune systems aren't quite as robust as that of an adult, so having a clean, safe environment where they can mature is far better than somewhere that isn't. So we're going to begin by cleaning out these cages. When we have adult birds breeding, we put wood chips on the floors, and this is generally because it means that it will last longer between cleanouts. Remember, the adult birds, particularly native birds, are quite prone to disturbances, so regular cleanouts really aren't suitable for them when they're breeding. It stresses them out and it really does them no good. But for the juvenile birds, it's very important to stay on top of cleanliness and replenishing the floors regularly, which is why I use newspaper. It's cheap or inexpensive, it's very easy to get hold of, and able to remove this every couple of days. You're removing any droppings, you're removing any spoilt seed that could then go off, and if the young birds ingest it, could make them quite unwell. You may notice that the perches in these cages are quite different. We have two wooden perches, one at either end, to promote a little bit of exercise for the birds jumping perch to perch or flying perch to perch for muscle development. But additionally, we also have in there a natural branch, and the idea of the natural branch is to, one, get the birds perching at different angles for muscle growth, but two, also giving their feet some exercise, and that's really helping develop the muscles in there. Additionally, to feed the birds, first off, we have seed hoppers. These are ideal to train the birds on because in the main bird room, I will feed my birds out of seed hoppers. It helps keep the seed relatively collected rather than scattered throughout the cage. But of course, these are young birds, so whilst training them with these, by actually filling a couple of them with some egg food, we have an egg food dish. Just a small dish like this with some fresh egg food in every day. Really important to make sure this is quite moist so it keeps the young birds hydrated whilst they're still learning. But also we have a large egg food dish with the seed, so they've got plenty of access to all the food they're going to need whilst they're molting. Birds are generally quite scruffy creatures as well, particularly species like greenfinches. They're really messy and they love to dunk their food in water, which is why when I'm giving them water, I give it them in fountain drinkers. Now, the idea of fountain drinkers is they can drink out of there absolutely fine, but they're less likely to go and poo in there, and they're less likely, hear that, less likely to actually dunk their food in that. And the reason for that is it's going to keep the water quality higher for longer. And of course, I'm replacing that every day, but we just want to make sure that at no point are they getting some water that's going sour or foul tasted, meaning they're not fully hydrated. At this time, the birds will also get a vitamin supplement in their water, and this is to help promote good quality feather growth in both the quality of those feathers and the volume of the feathers, to make sure that no deficiencies are taking place. It will also help buffer the stress from the environmental change as well, and boost an already suppressed immune system whilst they're molting. So you might be looking at these cages thinking, are they too small? And that is an accurate observation, and I certainly won't be looking to house birds in these for very long. However, at this young age, all of these birds are still quite prone to panicking. That is one why we keep them in smaller cages, is so that they can't pick up speed and fly into solid objects where they could possibly hurt themselves. I found that housing them in aviaries at this young causes more problems than it fixes. Additionally, you can notice that we have them in small groups. So we have groups of 2s and 3s, and the idea of this, once again, is so that they're in smaller groups, there's not much competition for resources, and they've got plenty of space per bird. Now on to the actual weaning part. We have to get the young birds ready to be separated from the parent birds. Now, first thing to note, there is no age that this is suitable at. You need to always look at whether the young birds are actually feeding themselves. That is the most crucial thing. Are they feeding themselves, and are they drinking for themselves? Because if they're not ready to wean. Now, with native finches and canaries, or for most of the native finches anyway, that is between 28 to 40 days. And I use that as a rough guide. I go, any earlier than 28 days, it's not happening. And then generally 40 days is usually about the cut-off period. But that's just a general rule. Now, the way that I test this, first off, is am I noticing the young birds feeding themselves? So they all have some egg food drawers in there. Are they eating egg food for themselves? Are they eating some frozen pinkies for themselves? But to test this properly, first thing I'll do, and it's one of two things, either we'll have cages like this, and I will put a wire divider in, separate the young birds away from their parents, and then see, are they actually consuming the food themselves, or are they begging for food through the wire? Or if the cages can't have a wire divider in, I'll add something like this. Now, this is an external wire bath. Once again, it's a very similar idea. Pop the young birds in there with some egg food and some water. They're separate from the parents, but they can still see them, so they don't really panic too much, and they've got them to support. And we see if they're consuming for themselves. And that is generally the best way of seeing how they're doing. Ollie, why do you take them away from the parents? Why don't you leave them with them? Well, that is a fantastic question. It's something I get asked quite a lot. Why don't you leave them with them and let them molt out? Well, there's actually multiple reasons for this. The first thing is that with all the species I have here, I always try and mimic what it's like in the wild for them. So let's take the greenfinches, for example. Our European greenies will have chicks. They will rear them for about 14 days when they'll fledge the nest. The chicks will then spend 2 weeks learning how to feed for themselves whilst hiding in the undergrowth and learning to fly. And then after about 30 to 35 days, the parent birds are looking to go back for another clutch. So they end up leaving those youngsters to find their own way. They need to feed themselves, they need to fly, they need to protect themselves, whilst the parents go and have a second clutch of eggs. So that's the first reason. They're left independent from about 35 days old in the wild. The second reason is in captivity, of course, the birds are restricted to some more room. That's how captivity is. No matter how big the aviary is, the chicks will always chase the parents. So the idea of also separating them is when the parent birds want to go for that second clutch, if you leave the chicks in with them, the chicks are likely to go in the nest site, poo on the eggs, smash the eggs perhaps, pull at the nest, and that will cause the parents to be aggressive with them and actually leads to a threat to the chicks. They might pull at the feathers if their parents are trying to reline the nest with them. They might get aggressive because they just don't feel that the chicks need to be hanging around. And you can also get exhausted parent birds if they're constantly being chased by hungry chicks, which can feed for themselves but are too lazy to. Then it usually just goes south. So that is why we wean them at that age. Now that is not strictly true for all the species, but for most of the native birds I have here it is. But if we take the bearded reelings for example, I'm going to leave them with their parents until they finish molting. I've noticed the chicks are starting to look to feed themselves at about 30 days now. We've even got one chick that's about 45 days old and I still keep seeing it fed by the parent birds. But if I pull them away too early, we risk losing them. So I'm very, very cautious with them. At the moment, in a very similar circumstance, we have our hawfinches in the main bird room. One of the things with hawfinches, and it's mainly due to their advanced and quite intricate breeding ecology, we have to keep a really close eye on what the male bird's doing. Now, thankfully, the male bird has been removed and it's the hen rearing one single chick, but it has been known in some circumstances that male hawfinches will kill their own sons, and the reason they do this is they recognise them as competition. So that is another reason that we have to be very, very careful, where actually we might be more inclined to remove the father bird and leave the chicks with the hen for much longer. But it's always about the situation and the species. So there you have it. That is how I wean my young birds. Now, it's only the oldest youngsters that have been weaned so far, so that's 9 greenfinch chicks and 7 canary chicks. We do have some red poles, about 6 or 7 of them that are ready to be weaned. We have got a number of nests of greenfinches that are nearly there. I'm just not 100% convinced just yet that they're fully independent enough. And of course, we do have a baby hawfinch as well that is starting to feed itself. He is gobbling up loads and loads of waxworms, but I'm not taking any chances. He's staying in with mum for probably another couple of weeks to a month or so yet. But that is birds for you, everyone. So thank you ever so much for watching. If you have enjoyed the episode today and you'd like to see more, we've got loads of tours coming up very soon where we'll be going around multiple avicultural setups in the UK and abroad. So make sure to subscribe down below, smash the like button and follow us on other social media, Instagram, Facebook and TikTok for daily updates and behind the scenes footage of all of our birds. So thank you very much for watching once again. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.